Okay. I can do that. Good evening. This is the Bridgeport Zoning Board of Appeals, November 12th, 2025. I'm going to give you the commissioners, and there's only 4, so if you want to stay, that's fine. If not, let me know, because in order to get approved, you have to have all 4, when normally it would be 5. So it's entirely up to you, just let me know. So I'll give you the commissioners. To my right is Edward Huck Williams. To my left is Eric Johnson and Paul Miller, and I'm Robin Shepherd, the chairman.
Item number 1, AK Beverage LLC at 1923 Boston Avenue is seeking a variance of section 10.10.2 to allow grocery beer sales within 750 feet of a protected use in the MX2 zone.
Hi, good evening. Danny Porco, Atlantis Management Group. If possible, to re-adjourn to the December meeting? Yes, yes. Great, thank you.
Item number 2, Storm Haven LLC, 61 Anchorage Drive, is seeking a variance of section 3.170.3E for the maximum allowable height and section 3.170.3F for the maximum floor area to legalize the existing 2-bay detached garage in the N3 zone.
Cheers, member of the board. Chris Russo with Russo & Rizzio LLC, offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield, here on behalf of the applicant, the property owner at 61 Anchorage Drive. Here on a property some of you may be familiar with. This is Mary Jane Foster's old house, if you remember that name. I know it well. My older brother actually grew up across the street at 30 Anchorage Drive. But the subject property here, 61 Anchorage Drive, it's located in the N3 zone and contains an existing 2.5-story single-family dwelling on the north side of the street. So you can see right here. Here's the dwelling. The lot is extremely oversized for this zone. The requirement is a minimum of 9,000 square feet. The site contains over 66,000 square feet, making it more than 7 times the minimum lot area. The House C building type only requires 75 feet of frontage. This site has over 3 times that. So it's always stood as this very large and open lot with this house, very pretty house that's in the front towards Anchorage Drive. I'll show you some pictures that I have. And that has meant it's also significantly under coverage. With what is being proposed in the application, the coverage would be 17.36%, and 65% is permitted in this zone. So it's way, way, way under coverage. Just to give that to you in raw numbers for this site, that's another 31,831 square feet in site coverage permitted as of right on the site. So basically 32,000 extra square feet just in site coverage. That's not even floor area, because there's no floor area restriction. The restriction is height, which is 2.5 stories. So, I mean, you could have a massive, massive building here on this property, given its size. Some of you may know this property was on the market for a while. I can tell you personally, I fielded a lot of calls about subdividing this property into 3 separate lots. Luckily, my client bought this property, keep it as one piece, and lived there with his wife and kids. It was a house, a property that needed some TLC, no doubt, and my client has invested heavily to do that. And one of the challenges that faced him was maintaining that look and feel of the original structure. The structure's not in the historic district, but knowing Black Rock my whole life, if you know Black Rock, it's safe to say that this is one of the iconic properties in that neighborhood, and the dwelling as well. So again, it needed some upgrading, but rather than create an attached garage, which obviously can be done given the amount of coverage that's available, he opted to detach the garage and keep that kind of original look of the structure. They added a beautiful porch. I'll show you a wraparound porch that you can see, but separated the garage from the dwelling. So the dwelling could just sit there nicely with its character separated. Again, it could be attached, but it would end up adding just more bulk. I mean, you could fit a 16-car garage on this property, but all it does is adds more bulk and essentially blocks people's view more. But all they needed was a 2-car garage, pretty standard. It's located in the rear yard. You can see right here, your regulations require that detached structures like that be located in the rear yard, so it's where it should be. It also, the regulations require that detached accessory structures be located 3 feet from the property line. We set back from that even further. There was actually a shed there that was closer to his neighbor's property line. He removed it and set the garage back farther. So opting to detach, also one of the benefits of it, it puts brakes in the building mass. It creates view corridors in between the main house and the detached garage. Other properties have not done that, and you can see that on Anchorage Drive. And I want to show you one. (141) Anchorage Drive. It's completely compliant. I actually did the application for this one. This property's not doing anything non-conforming. They're within the standards. But you could see on this site, and I'll show you an area too of Anchorage Drive, by attaching in because these are 2 garages that this property has, along with a carport. This is all attached. And what it does is, it's a one sizable building mass, and it blocks your views out towards the water. Now, again, it's completely conforming. No one here has any type of view easements. There's no view easements to the water. In some areas, like my client's property, it's nice to have it open, but in other properties, the view's blocked. Some people have plantings. I'm going to show you some pictures. You'll see that my client's neighbor has plantings that block the view partially. It's perfectly legal. They're allowed to do that. It's their property. They can plant like that, and nobody has view easements. But what my client's done, I think, by breaking up the garage and the main dwelling is is again, I think, maintaining some view corridors down to the water. I'm sure everyone wants to maintain their water views the way they are, but when you build a structure on a waterfront, you're going to impact views. It's impossible not to. But again, I think my clients designed this in such a way to be considerate of that. So how we got here, my client went through the zoning and building permit process. And when he submitted the plan, he originally did have it attached, but that's when he started considering it. And he had already received his permits and thinking of, it would be nice to just separate this and leave the kind of house as it is with this, you're gonna see again, this nice wraparound porch and keep it separated. So he altered the plan to detach it, and he shared that with the building department, which had issued the building permit to him. And they instructed him to proceed. And I think my client reasonably relied on that information and proceeded with the construction. So I just wanna submit it to you. That is email dated July 28, 2025. It says, Alan, proceed with the alternate garage configuration as described in the additional site and building plan submitted. Please contact me if you have any questions. And that was from the building enforcement officer. So I think it's reasonable. He submitted, talked about, I actually think the officer had come out and viewed and looked at the site, asked about detaching it, and a plan to detach it. Building officer said, proceed. As it turns out, the revised plan requires variances, which is why we're here now. The applicant's seeking 2 variances in order to legalize the existing detached garage, which again, I have pictures, I'll show you. The first is from the section that was read out. I won't read it because it's like 20 letters long, but it's to increase the maximum permitted number of stories for a detached garage from 1.5 to 2 stories, basically because there's dormers on the second floor. But again, keep in mind, it's in a zone that permits 2.5 stories for principal buildings. The second is, again, from section 3.170.3, which is to increase the maximum permitted floor area for the detached structure to 1,344 square feet. But again, in context, that's on a property that could have 32,000 square feet of additional site coverage. The garage itself, again, what you see there, over here on this side, right there. Garage measures 24 by 28 feet. The first floor is at 672 square feet, is used for parking. It includes a staircase at the rear landing to the second floor. So footprint-wise, slightly over 650 square feet. Architecturally, I'll show you the elevations. So architecturally, the garage features 2 bays and shed dormers on both the front and the rear elevations, providing ample transparency and visual interest. I think we all know how important transparency is to this code, and you could see that on the second with the dormer, just to increase the transparency there on the frontage. Again, because it's legalization, I just want to say I think my client reasonably relied on the direction to proceed with the building of this structure. And one thing I just wanted to know, because you'll look at photos and it looks like a construction site in front of the garage, which is because my client was told not to proceed before this matter was resolved. So I just want you to understand that when you're looking around and you see some of the construction materials. This application reduces a nonconformity by removing a shed that was closer to the side property line. It was non-conforming. We pulled the garage back to be a conforming setback. I know you've heard me state this before on other applications. The elimination or reduction of a nonconformity can serve as a separate basis for the granting of a variance. And that's what we're doing here. But I do think there's hardship here. I'm almost always before you asking for a variance where the regulations are requiring that my client build less, and I'm requiring, and I'm requesting a variance to be able to build more. For example, I'll be here and say that I don't have enough room on a site, so I need to request a setback variance to be able to build into an area where the regulations don't permit. We don't have that here. We're compliant as the setback. Another example, a lot of times I'm before you with an undersized lot, and I need a variance from this board because the regulations require less site coverage, and I'm asking you for more. But again, that's not what we have here. We have this extremely kind of odd and unique situation where there's plenty of coverage to give. This is within setbacks. To make it compliant, we would have to build more structure and then the standards go to 2.5 stories, and there's no restriction. That makes sense, but the principal dwelling standards are different than the detached. And simply by drives the need for the variances. So with that, I want to run through some photos and some areas to show where I think this makes sense. So this is an aerial of Anchorage Drive. And which again, what you can see is a couple of the newer houses that are built. This is the one I'm showing, 141. Because they're these large buildings, so again, what you can see here, here's the original house, 1950. Our names right here, these are our names on Grover's Ave. See, there's two houses, there's one right here, and I'll show you their views, where, because of where the garage is, it's restricted from what it was previously, but there's still a view out. Again, wide open in the yard, but you can see, here's our neighbor, next door neighbor, they have plantings here, they have every right to have this. Again, what they're doing is completely conforming, and we're trying to, again, try to maintain these spaces so that you can see out. These are important. So, going in text sometimes if they're looking at this stuff. But what you can see when you do here is gives them straight shot. This was attached, that would be completely blocked. And if this was attached, that would be completely blocked. So again, we have this situation where following exactly, and this is just that's 149 inside. Where the regulations are almost driving you to build more, which is extremely unique. The other I want to show you this is 2024, so this garage is built. All that would end up actually doing by attaching it is putting line of sight to the water where this tree is and completely blocking it. So for those reasons, we think this is extremely reasonable variance, and it's frankly better for everybody in the neighborhood. And one thing I will show you is we have the signatures. Also across the street. Yeah, when you put up a structure, they're going to impact somebody's view. But I think when you look at what's being proposed here and what the regulations would be driving you to do, it actually creates a greater obstruction than what we're proposing here today. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You want? Oh, sure.
Good evening, Honorable Board. My name is David Cottingham. I'm the Design Review Coordinator with OPED. I wrote a brief narrative on this project, and I'd just like to go through it. The garage, as constructed, consists of 2 stories. That exceeds the maximum of 1.5 stories permitted under Section 3.170.3.e of the zoning regulations. In addition, the accessory structure totals approximately 1,344 square feet, and that exceeds the maximum allowable floor area of 650 square feet established under Section 3.170.3.f.1. The proposed structure meets all applicable setback and site coverage requirements. And the criteria that the board should consider with the requested variances fall under Section 11.90.6, which are as follows. Literal enforcement of the applicable zoning regulations would result in exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship because of the unique physical conditions of the subject property. The exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship claimed results from conditions that are unique to the subject property and not generally applicable to other properties in the neighborhood or zone in which they are located. The exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship has not been created by the owner or a previous owner. The variance to be granted is the least deviation from the applicable regulations that is sufficient to reduce the exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship, and that will allow the owner to make reasonable use of the subject property. And lastly, the variance granted will not adversely impact the neighborhood, will not impair the appropriate use or development of the adjacent property, will maintain the public welfare, and will be consistent with the general intent of the zoning code and the master plan of conservation and development. That is all I have, unless you have any questions for me. Thank you.
And I just want to pick up on a point too that David speaking reminds me. So people might ask when they read these regulations that we're asking for variances from is what is the purpose of those regulations? Why if the principal dwelling is allowed to be 2.5 stories, why does the detached accessory structure have to be lower? And why is it restricted as a percentage of floor area of the principal dwelling? Why is it reduced that? And one of the goals of that regulation is to make sure you don't have a situation where somebody builds a garage that almost competes with the principal dwelling, right? It's supposed to be smaller than lower in height than the principal dwelling. It's not supposed to look like we have two principal dwellings on the property. That's why those regulations are there. And so when you look at this picture right here, you can see there's no question what the principal dwelling is. This is clearly an accessory structure based on its location, based on the fact this is significantly taller, and its size. And so from an intent perspective, I don't think what is here and what's shown on the site violates that in any way. We just, again, have this unusual hardship, I believe, and that what the reg is basically requiring us to do is create more bulk, build more, which I don't know if, I can't remember I've had an application where it's like, well, if you complied with the regulations, what you would need to do is build more. It's usually, I come to you and it's, if the variance is denied, I have to build less. So I think that it's just a extremely unique situation from one we usually have before us. But again, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
There plumbing in the garage?
I'm not sure, I'll have to check with my client.
Yeah, I look at that garage, and the second story just invites being some sort of a guest house or something like that, why else would you build that as the top layer of a garage?
Funny enough, the regs allow backyard cottages, and actually backyard cottages are bigger. Backyard cottages can be bigger than garages. So the regs actually allow backyard cottages, but that's not what's proposed here. And if they ever, if my client ever tried to do that or tried to change it, they'd have to come back and get approval. That's not what's before you. But oddly enough, it's allowed down there. There's a lot of, actually, I've done a number of backyard cottages now in Black Rock since the new regulations have been passed. This site, I mean, has a lot area for it, no doubt, but that's not what's being proposed in this application. I think it puts a nice, I mean, you've seen these garages where, this dormer is in here, it's, your standard garage. Adding this and adding some transparency, I think fits with what you see over here, the character here, with all the windows that you have here, and then having that there as well. I know it's something that the regs, obviously promote, having additional windows and transparency.
Into you. And it's really a nice building, but my concern is this building, the garage,
The garage, yeah.
right? Did you guys seek approval from zoning before erecting the garage?
Sorry?
Did you seek permission from zoning before erecting that garage, the detached garage?
Right, so what happened was originally they came in with a proposal that did attach the garage.
Yes, I understand that though.
Understand that?
I understand what I am.
So they got issued, just so you know timeline-wise, they got issued a zoning permit and they got issued a building permit.
Right.
Then when somebody from building came out, they said, you know, I think it really makes sense to detach this garage. And the gentleman from building said, you can do that and you can proceed based on that plan. So they thought because building had said to proceed, that they were good to proceed. But what they didn't realize is that that also needed zoning to check it again and re-verify. So they relied on, and that's why I supplied that email. Because I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of times we come and people have just gone and done things and not had checks with the city, but they thought they were okay.
So really, more than anything else, we're kind of talking about somebody from the building department misspoke a little bit and got
Yeah,
the
maybe
same
didn't
role.
understand. I mean, I wasn't there to handle the conversation, but I mean, I think the email's pretty clear. You know, I understand, you know, everybody, you know, some things just end up happening. I think if you look at that, I think they reasonably relied on it. You know, and again, I think they were right to think in that direction of not having it attached. I think it's better for the site and the surrounding neighbors.
The issue I'm having is not that it's better so or it's not better this way. The issue I'm having here is that he went ahead and built it without the city saying, giving the go-ahead. And according to you, there's a miscommunication. Someone from zoning said yes, according to you. Allegedly.
Well, we're from the email, just the email.
Allegedly. So that's my concern. Yeah, I have the email there, yeah, but yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you.
But and again, even with Commissioner, you know, again, I think when you look at, particularly, if I can show this photo.
The issue is not about whether the building is pretty.
What you're doing, all you're doing, not you, all that would happen. I'm on the porch here. This is the garage. It would then have to just be attached. It would just be one continuous structure. And I think it's more impactful to the front end to make it by doing that. You want to do I? You're motioning like you want to speak. But yeah.
Is there anybody for? You for? Okay. Is there anybody against?
Good evening. My name is Laura Indelicati. I'm an attorney at Wofsy, Rosen, Queskin, and Kuriansky in Stamford, and I represent the homeowners at 136 Grovers. That's Duran Amir and Sybil Malkin. I want to pick up on the issue that you left off with here. We've heard a lot about that this was a house that needed a lot, and they clearly knew how to go to zoning and knew how also to go to building to get the approvals that they needed. They, I suppose, had a zoning approval for one plan, changed the plan, went from attached, decided it's our preference to detach it, asked for zoning, did not ask for building. Asked for building, did not ask for zoning. Building sent them an email, said go ahead. Zoning clearly said problem because that's why we're here, and they didn't ask zoning until after the fact. So that's the order of events. There was no zoning approval. These are not unaware parties. They knew how to use the process, and they chose not to use it to change their plan. Okay, so that I think should be absolutely clear. The next thing I really want to focus on is there's been a lot of conversation about how the zoning regulations would require them to attach this to that. If you attach this to that, you'd have a non-compliant principal structure because that's 10 feet from the side property line. So that's clearly not the workaround for all you have to do to be compliant here. What the zoning regulations require to make this plan compliant is a structure that's 1.5 stories and 650 square feet. If it's a cottage, which it appears to be, maximum 800 square feet. Here, the applicant for the variant made a choice. I had one plan, I'm going to configure it another way. I can make compliant use of my property. I could build a bigger structure. I could build a compliant outbuilding. I'm choosing not to. The zoning regulations and the general statutes require you to show an unusual hardship in order to be allowed a variance to the zoning regulations. A preference of building, a creation of a non-compliance of the owner's own choice is not a hardship under the regulations. It cannot be the basis for granting a variance. So this is a choice. I think things that we heard Mr. Russo say, obviously they could just build a bigger building with attached garage. Obviously they could accomplish a building that is compliant under regulations, but they chose not to. Unfortunately, under your regulations for variance and under the statutes, that simply cannot justify issuing a variance here. And there's case law in it, which I won't recite to you. It's in my opposition letter that I sent to you, but this is very well explored by the courts, and I think the court would easily find here that there is no hardship. There's no hardship because the lot is big. In fact, one of the cases I cited where someone had a very old establishment that was a non-conforming use for a very long time, and they said, well, the use has been non-conforming for a very long time. Someone set it up even though they never got the variance. And this property is enormous. It's 10 times the size of what I could have in this zone, so just allow me to continue on. And the court weighed in and said, okay, well, the lot's not non-conforming, it's just really big. It seems there are many conforming things that you could do on the lot, and you're asking us to do one that's not related to the size of the lot for this choice. So I think that's relevant here, in that just the fact that the lot is large doesn't mean that there are not conforming uses for which they could make reasonable use of their property. They're choosing a non-conforming one, and that choice makes it not a hardship. I just want to also give you guys a photo. I emailed it in too late. So as you can see from this photo, before this enormous structure was built, which is the size of a small house, there was a very large and unspoiled view to the water of the neighbors, who I represent here. And as this structure started going up and their view started to disappear, they wondered whether, wow, is this right? Can this happen? First, they learned there were issues with the building permits. Then they learned that it was not zoning compliant, and then we learned about, this application for the variance. While ordinarily I understand what council is saying about compliant structures obstructing views and there's nothing anyone can do about it, this is not a compliant structure. And it's being put up right in the line of sight, overshadowing a pool of a neighbor. And so he's asking for a nonconformity that has a deleterious impact on an adjacent property, a condition that forecloses the granting of a variance under the regulations. So I think the only other thing I want to note, just one more thing about this email. If you go on the building department website, like right smack dab in the middle of the page for permits, it says that you must also get zoning compliance. So I really think I just want to hammer in on the fact that the notion of ignorance here, oh, I relied on the building department and I didn't know. It's not a basis for the granting of the variance. It doesn't make a hardship that he built this non-conforming structure and strayed from the approval that he had. But also, I don't think it's really to be credited, because this is something that is easily knowable and should have been known by the applicant, that they needed zoning compliance. And when they went there, zoning said this does not comply. A final thing I want to point out is the zoning regulations, and I spoke to zoning about this, also require for this house type that the half-story in any structure be no more than 65% of the floor area of the story below it, and also that dormers be no wider than 50% of the story below it. So I think that in addition to the nonconformities specifically identified, the size is more than double what's allowed. The height is 2 stories when only 1.5 is allowed. And also that second floor is nearly 100% of the story below, and the dormers are clearly almost the entire width of the story below. So those are further aspects that are non-conforming that make this unacceptable. And the fact that principal buildings are allowed to be 2.5 stories, well, it's just not a principal building. It's a detached outbuilding. That was a choice, okay? So I think that's all we have in addition to what's in our papers, and I just want to emphasize that this was a choice. Council admits it was a choice, and there can be no finding of a hardship on that basis. Personal preference does not authorize the granting of a variance under these circumstances. Thank you.
Against? Okay, Attorney Russo, you can do a rebuttal.
First, I just want to be clear on one point. A building permit had been issued for the property. So they were already through the process. They had been issued a building permit. At that point, my client has talked with the building official about making a change to the plans, which, if you know construction, I mean, that happens all the time when you go through construction, that you might look at something, get into something, you might be like, oh, I want to change this, I want to, you start to look at things and you decide you want to change it. And then he relied on that email thinking it's the city as one, entity, and they said you can proceed with it. So again, I think it was reasonable to rely on it. A couple things. So one, I didn't hear counsel address one of my arguments, which is regarding the reduction of the non-conformity. Again, and it might be tough to see, but because it's far away. But there's a non-conforming shed. Other thing I want to show is there's a photo that you do have to pick up the building and move it. So this photo that council submitted of your client's property. You can see the water right here. What this practically would do, because they're not going to just destroy the structure and have nothing after it's already all built. If they do, they'd have to pick it up and move it over. So here's the porch. This structure would be lifted up and moved, block that view. And not only that, it would block the view for their other neighbor, the one that I showed you that had that nice bay window that looked out, that looked straight through here. When I took that picture, I was on the other side of the garage. So it would block this view for counsel's client, and then it would block the view for the other neighbor as well. Now, it would, and again, that would be compliant, it would possibly open view behind it, right? Because it would shift over, so there might be some view. But that's why I tried to show this picture. Here. This is the view, line of sight right here, that I just showed. Moves forward, then it's going to open up behind it. But this tree is right in the middle. Let me show you that tree. Massive. Now this is this week. So you can imagine when that tree is fully leafed out, what type of screen it's going to be to the water. So to me, it's a case of cutting off your nose to spite your face, because you're eliminating a view out to the water by forcing this to be attached. Again, I do think there is hardship here. This is extremely unique in that we're not asking to build more than you could possibly build on this site. The garage and the use are allowed on this site. We're not asking for a non-conforming use, or it's not like detached garages aren't allowed. But what the regs would force you to do is build more, pick up this building, and then create an attachment and basically build more structure. And I think that's an extremely unique situation, and one that really, I think, defies the intent of the regulations. That's not what the regulations are intending to do, but in this particular situation, kind of creates this inverse situation where that's what it would end up causing. I think it's a shame because, again, as my client recognized, maintaining the look of that structure, which again is an iconic structure in Black Rock Turnpike, there on its own without having an attached garage, and maintaining that openness that you see, I think it would impinge on the character, and certainly the regs push you to try to maintain character as much as you can. I think my client has been extremely restrained in their development of the property, considering how much could be done on that property. Has been extremely restrained. And again, save this property, which I can tell you, there was a lot of people looking at this to subdivide it. Kept it as one lot, really keeping that openness down there in this area. People love to walk down here and walk by here. And I think they've done a fantastic job of maintaining it. Have built a garage that I think is tasteful, particularly in its proportion to the principal dwelling. And for those reasons, we respectfully grant what I think are extremely sensible variances. And clearly, if you look at the neighbor list and the amount of neighbors that's submitted in support of it, I think it's clear that the surrounding neighbors agree. I understand counsel's client feels particularly affected. Somebody is going to be impacted when a structure's built, but I think this reduces the impact to them as much as possible. Happy to answer any other questions. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, this matter is closed.
arguing. They're arguing about it. Don't get me wrong, I see it.
So it don't have no heat in it?
Yeah, you know, I don't know what's going on with the city. There's no heat.
There's never no heat in here.
You know, we aren't, you know, you turn it on for these guys, you know, why can't we get a little, I think I want to sue somebody. Can we sue somebody in here? My hands are cold. And when I went over this,
So
when I went over there,
we have to agree.
came out the house.
We just gotta agree and vote on deferring
For
number
December.
one.
Motion to have it deferred for December.
Hello,
Yes, second.
defer to December.
Yeah. We should just deny them.
December to,
Yeah, that one's,
aye.
The explanation that the attorney was giving you was correct. The applicant made a permit to both, an application to both the zoning department and the building department at the same time for the housework and the garage build. Zoning, realized that it was detached, and I'm not so sure when it was attached, but at some point, we were made aware that it was a detached garage, and building department also, so building, approved the building permit based on, the submission for the house, and failed to notify the applicant that the garage had to be a separate permit. So that fell through the cracks. And the email from Jim kind of confused it. Jim Newell from Building confused it also because he said that he was good to go.
He was good to go, yeah. I would disagree.
Yeah. So there was confusion and there was a disconnect between the applicant and the staff with the city. However, that doesn't negate that it does need variances. He has a couple options, as the attorney was saying. He could move the garage, make it compliant on setback, attach it to the house. It becomes one structure. It would be compliant with the dormers there. The issue is that the half story is becoming a full story because of the dormers. So half story is 65%, is that correct? 65% of the first floor.
In the first
So
floor.
it's blocking.
So because the dormers, he's over that. So, I mean, he could remove the dormers completely, and it would be in compliance, or he could reduce the dormer sizes, front, back, or however he chooses to do it. You know, we don't design it, to get that down to 65% of the second floor. And that's really how to resolve that. You could leave the garage there at the current peak height and reduce or remove the dormers, and it would be in compliance with zoning. Or he could move the house, attach it to the, move the garage, attach it to the house, and he would be in compliance.
I think that probably more than any concerns I have about neighbors' views or anything like that, And I live right across the street from there. I mean, I have a view of that water. My house is on those pictures. So I'm familiar with what they're talking about and so forth, but I think of more issue to us should be, can we have somebody with the wherewithal to come in and build what's in excess of $1 million structure between the house and the garage and so forth, who should have enough expertise in the building trade that we would set a precedent that that person could come in and make a mistake, and then we will correct it for them. And I don't think that the Zoning Board of Appeals needs to be in that position. Now, I'm almost certain that if we deny the appeal for a variance, it's probably going to go to court, and that is up to the parties involved. But we're not the right people to be turning this around, I don't think. That's just my opinion.
Well, the way I'm looking at it, since there was a miscommunication, it's a beautiful building. You can compromise with the dormers by making the dormers a little smaller. They have to try to find a common ground between the both parties. That would be my suggestion, because I mean, it's a nice building, it's a nice garage, and but they went about it. There was miscommunication. And then,
So you're saying, in essence, to make the dormers
Smaller.
smaller so that they could,
So it'll be in compliance.
right,
so it could be in compliance.
to be in compliance. I mean, because to knock it down and to take it back and then to tuck it down,
Actually move it.
then they have to move it.
Then they have to move it.
Yeah, something that we should be.
Right. So, I mean,
Based on that, I move we deny.
you said motion to deny. I'm going to have to uphold the city's decision.
Well, your compromise would be up to the applicant.
Right. Up to the applicant, right.
So what you're saying is, this board, we can't tell them to compromise? Because we're,
No.
oh, okay.
No.
We have to approve it.
Yeah.
You have to go back and what are you tasked with, right? And so you have to determine if there's a hardship.
Okay.
It's a very precise, I mean, I know sometimes it's difficult to wrap our heads around this idea, but a hardship can't be self-imposed. And so that's what you have to consider. So sometimes, people come in, they can have a plan, it could look beautiful, but if it's not in conformance with the zoning regulations, the only way around that to get a variance is that there's a hardship, and that has a real meaning, and that's what you have to consider. Right? So all the other considerations, is there a hardship here? Right?
But isn't it a hardship because it's too, the dormers are too, no?
No, that's not hardship. That's not hardship.
Money
So that's
also
just
to
money.
move,
Well, money doesn't come into play. It
some
never
money
comes
doesn't
into
come,
play. But yeah, money doesn't come into play. So again, I say, we really shouldn't be determining if they should make it smaller or move it or whatever. That's not our,
It's
that's
either
not
deny
us.
or approve. It's either deny or approve.
So there's a motion to deny it.
I second the motion.
You did that.
It doesn't matter because we would have to have all four. So either if I say approve or he says approve, it doesn't matter because we would have had to have four.
We had to have 4, yeah.
So
Now you guys gotta vote.
Why?
Is it 2-2 or is it 4-0?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's probably 2-2.
Yeah,
It's 2-2.
2-2.
The kids that don't live in that neighborhood approve.
Okay. Minutes, you got minutes? October 15th.
I move we approve the minutes of last
Second
meeting.
it. Second it.
You did a good job.
Yeah. Just,
You did a good job.
you just got my name wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is, Freddie. Oh, no, that's,
Yeah. Right there. It's Big King. Vice Chair Johnson. No, I'm just joking.
He said it's funny, it's arrogance.
And that was a 4-0, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
I said
This is 7:06.
no, it's not. Oh, it is.
7:05.
I got 6 on my phone.
It is. I got 7:10, so we all messed.
On your phone?
No, on my watch. It's fast.
On your phone?
No, on my watch.
Oh.
It's fast.
December.
No, you won't.
So that means that
So they can't. What?